time to get nitpicky in detail. Ha ha ha! Well, you gotta. Our next major assignment is the technical description. It's gonna mean looking at stuff in more detail than you'd normally be doing. Part of the job, man. One of the jobs of the more technically oriented people in a company is going to be explaining stuff to the less technologically oriented people. Providing layouts, providing good detail, orienting the reader. This is all stuff that you expect to see in a technical workplace. And it's the thing you expect to see in a technical description, which is our next assignment. 2 pages minimum, needs to look like a real-world document. Your assignment is to present specific technical information and schematics on a specialty product in your field, in your group's field, since I know there's been confusion in the past. If you're, say, in the environmental group, find something that's used environmentally. If you're in the transportation group, do a breakdown of some vehicle or something. As long as it's in your group's field, it will work. This is going to be also, though, good practice for the formal recommendation report where you are supposed to describe a new product. So you can look at this as a way of building up your description skills for that big report. So you need to present technical information and schematics on a specialty product in your field. You must do so in a way where the information is both complete and clear. In other words, be coherent without simplifying. Your target audience should be engineers, people on a high level of technological savvy who are familiar with your field. So you won't be dumbing this down to the public or anything. Provide detailed information. The description should be predominantly technical in nature, including either an internal schematic, the guts of the product, so to speak, an in-depth overview of the user interface, or both as appropriate. Graphics are encouraged. We're going to look at some sample technical descriptions, and they're going to be of video game machines. It was an assignment I had a while back, and for this document, people not only provided a layout of the outside of the device, they would also have a diagram of the inside of the device. Either find a picture of somebody who took an Xbox apart and showed you the various parts, or an online schematic or something. They would also present an overview of the user interface. If you're working a video game machine, it's important to know how you actually use it. This will, of course, require graphics. For most things, graphics should be available online. I do want you to cite whatever graphics you end up using only in footnotes, because it wouldn't take place in a real document. But you need to make this look as much like a professional technical description as you can. So let's look at some schematics and descriptions and see exactly what we're up against. If you're alive at any point in time, I'm sure you probably know what this is. This is a technical description of the Millennium Falcon, blueprints. Is it particularly easy to find stuff? You've got to kind of know where stuff is to find out where it is, if that makes any sense at all. There's not a nice list of the steps. There's no real divisions. It's something you should take away from the instructions assignment, where you were dividing up your level into different rooms. That would be a possible way to organize this thing. If you could also organize it by use. If you could have a list, say, of technical components, a list of motor components, a list of living spaces, so on and so forth. It's probably relatively complete. The problem here, though, is that everything is just mishmashed together. The writer of this document did not really try to impose an organizational structure on it. And that is a job. It doesn't matter if there's not a clear organization on the unit. Your job is to organize the information and make it easier to find. This is another technical description. They went out of their way to make the picture look a lot clearer. The problem is they did that by just putting numbers all over the place. And now it's actually not any easier to find specific components. You will also notice that the list of various components over on the right still isn't organized in any way, shape, or form. You have a very long list here. And what happens when a reader comes across a very, very long list? Their eyes glaze over and they go, at least that's been my experience. This is yet another one. And we have to deal with the resolution we have here. So you can't read the text as much as I would really like. I'm guessing this is from a poster or something. You notice they provide an overhead shot just like they have in the others, but they also provide boxes where they specify different bits of information. There's an overview over on the left. Right underneath that, there's a bit about the computer. There's the stuff that's in the dorsal area. The hyperdrive has its own section. The illegal sensors are pointed out. Quad laser cannons have their own section. This is basically broken down into a bunch of different chunks. And this way, it's a lot easier to find the specific information you want if you can divide it up into parts. Whoever designed this document did so in a fairly logical way. The weapons are up on the right. Underneath them are the control panels. We have the parts labeled based on the section of the ship. The computer and the hyperdrive are opposite the weapons and the controls. Kind of makes sense. And you have an orienting introduction there as well. You probably won't be designing your document as a giant poster, but you can learn a lot from this because this takes a complex object and divides it up into little sections so you can more easily find stuff. Because it's on a poster, it looks kind of cramped for our purposes, so I would expect yours to use the space you have a bit more effectively. Looking at ways to divide stuff, sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes you have to impose order on the object. You would generally need to look for logical divisions. The head has 4 parts. The thorax has 3 parts. The abdomen is a separate part, and then the legs are labeled. Voila, there's a nice, easy, sensible division between 4 parts here. And each of those has parts within it. If this didn't exist, it would be your job to come up with some kind of scheme. So what actually needs to be in the technical description assignment? The document itself will need a title. Yep. It doesn't have to be a creative, poetic title, but you're going to need a title. You will need an introduction. The basic information you need to get across is you need to introduce the object, just provide a little bit of background on it. If I'm doing a technical description of the PlayStation 5, pointing out that it's the 5th one in a line of gaming machines, has some level of relevance. Provide a general description, then go into an overview of the various parts and components. If I was doing, say, a PlayStation 5, the front panel, the back panel, the controller, those would be a good way to break it down. Part by part description. Each part gets its own heading. Describe the appearance. Have a picture, label it, and you can break down parts that way. Remember, the assignment asks you to do either an internal schematic, a user interface, or both if they're appropriate. Since everybody's going to be doing different subjects, it's going to depend on what your subject is. But at the very least, we need to see some interior level of detail. The technical description assignment is a good exercise of your organizational skills and your layout skills, for that matter. You're by nature going to try to get a grasp on a complex subject and then present it in a way that looks orderly. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's a skill that we've been working on pretty much all semester. It's been a factor in everything we've been doing. And it'll be something that really comes to yield benefits if you've been working at it in the big final report coming up soon. We'll talk about that one later. See ya.